Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do a little disassembly and maintenance on this little guy right here. This is an A2 knife. It's Andre Thorburn, Andre von Heerden, and this is a very interesting little piece. First off, I want to thank my buddy Andrew, who just graciously actually donated this to the channel, such that I would do a review and then sell it, and any money I sold it for went to charity. That's super kind of him, Andrew, and I appreciate that very much. So there we go. This is on IKBS, Icomacorth bearing system. And so as a result, there we go. I'm going to need to be very careful as I do this disassembly because it's probably going to have a bunch of loose balls in there. But I'm looking forward to this, hoping that it goes well. Okay, so one key component of any IKBS setup is having a mat that has a rim around it. Whether you're working inside a baking dish, which is something I've done previously, or you're doing something else more rigorous. Oh, okay, there's a second layer of screws in here. That's fine, I can work with that. Or you're doing something else more rigorous, or something like this. That works. You just need to make sure that you're getting everything right here. Okay, and I'm just going to try and remember which position these are in, and I'm doing that by arraying them in my little mat here, in the little pockets. Actually, here, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to move that, and then this goes here, then this goes, these two go there. All right, there we go. This has a bunch of little tiny screws. These are Torx T5, which means any kind of thread locker could be very dangerous, and also means that I'm not going to use any thread locker putting these guys back into place. Actually, do they have a little bit on there? Let's take a closer look at one of these screws. But as I remove this, actually it does look like there's a little tiny bit, so I'll use a little tiny bit of blue. But the danger here just becomes these million loose balls here. So I'm very, very carefully removing this top portion here. Whoa, that's Multi-Row IKBS right there. So you can see we've got about a bazillion little tiny balls here in two different rows on this. Oy, 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 this is going to be a treat to put back together, that's for damn sure. Yeah, and on the other side you can see it more clearly. Okay, and it looks like there's one ball worth of gap on both of them, which is fine. So the next step here is actually going to be to try and keep one set of balls isolated from the other. So I'm actually going to put this little one off to the side here with the hope that they all stay in one position, and then I'm going to address one set first and then go to another one. Just with the goal here of trying to keep everything separate and keep the balls in the right position. I am going to need tweezers for this, absolutely 100%, because these little balls tend to want to move of their own accord and whatnot. The balls want what the balls want. Alas, it's a truth in actually a variety of domains. And I'm just trying to remove these guys from the blade here. Get them all onto the... I should have put down a paper towel or something first. Then we'll clean the blade off separately here. But my goal here is actually just going to be to degunk these various little balls. And the way I'm going to do that is using some rubbing alcohol and these little cleaning patches here. The IKBS system kind of depends on the bearings here being coated in some sort of an oil or a lubrication or I mean, yeah. And so they tend to have a relatively thick grease on them, which is fine and is required for reinstallation, as you'll see. But... makes this a little bit more touch and go, and definitely makes the action vulnerable to picking up a little bit of gunk and then having trouble. So I'm just going to try and kind of pop these out on the other side here. This is a great many freaking balls here. There we go. And we are loose. Okay. Always, always, always check for stragglers because these will want to stay in one position here. The balls, that is, and you'll find yourself putting them down, putting a tool down off of your mat, and then you lose one. It doesn't matter, practically speaking, if you lose one or two of them. When you start losing a bunch more, it's a problem, and because this is a higher-end piece, I really want to keep it safe. But yeah, so okay, now at this point we have all of these balls nicely cleaned up. What I'm going to go ahead and do is just transfer them into one of these pockets up top here, such that they can just kind of hang out for a little while. I'm going to go ahead and push this through here. Very loud plane outside. I'm going to use a different little cotton patch here. I assume this is cotton. I didn't check the fiber distributions. Actually, I'm going to see if I can't, just since I'm pouring this out already, use that to cut the grease a little bit here and just drop these onto this patch directly. Yeah, that actually worked nicely, because half of it's just breaking that surface tension of the grease. You can see here some niceties. For instance, the liners are always anodized. This nice light blue color, which seems to be sort of a thing they just do for A2 knives, which is great. Well, I mean, any color would be great, but it's just a sign that they give a damn. And again, I'm just kind of cleaning these little guys off here. I'll give them another pass once I clean things up again, but on a fresh sheet. But so now I've got my two little sets of balls up in the corner there in a separate little container, such that they are out of play for the moment, and that'll allow me to go through and clean the rest of the knife off here using a separate patch. The goal, of course, just being to remove any gunk, remove any residual, because, you know, the same grease that the IKBS were floating in there or in the tracks, in the blade, etc. This knife was running pretty well already, but I'm hoping I can get it to run a little smoother still. Because especially as, like I said, as IKBS ages, so to speak, since its last clean out, you know, the grease can start to thicken up. You can get some unfortunateness to it. So, there we go. And I am not actually going to take the liner off of the the G10 here in any way, because I don't need to. Frankly, the knife is okay, and doing that, it's a titanium liner, so it's not like there's rust behind there or anything like that. Yeah, there's just no need of it. And that would require me to remove the pocket clip screws, which are probably freaking tiny. Yeah, they were another set of T5s. Not something I super love. Just have the stop pin fall off there. That's fine. Honestly, don't care. I will take that as an opportunity to degunk it slightly. There we go. Okay. Now I still have more gunk in the pivot hole there. I'm grabbing a Q-tip, sort of an affair. Just use a little bit of the booze here. See, there's just one track on the inside here, but there are two tracks over there, which means we're probably going to want to arrange the balls in these liners rather than in the blade, which is a little frustrating at some level, but certainly can work. Sliding this in there, ooh, yikes. A little bit of gunk migration into the pivot there. It's okay. Yeah, it's going to be way nicer. And make sure you clean out the internal stop pin track here, not because it gets super grody, but if there's anything up in this area or this area, it can potentially stop the knife from closing or opening fully. And that's not great. And I'm just going to use the rest of this Q-tip. The rest of it, it's not a quantity, Nick. Come on. Get your crap together. All right. Just clean that out. Nicely milled. This is a nice knife, absolutely 100%. I'll be honest here, this is a knife that I got as a donation a while back, probably maybe even a year ago. And I've been working through the same guy gave me a big stash of donations, which was great. But I've been working through them slowly and surely because, you know, unfortunately, knives that are donated tend to be last on the list because I don't have to get them home quickly. But I've been working through them slowly but surely, and I'm approaching the end of the batch of donations, and this is one I've kind of saved. Whereas, like, I want to make sure that, you know, I know I'm going to enjoy this review, just because I know it's a great knife, and so it's one that I would enjoy carrying, etc. And so I want to kind of relish this one, and I've been using it as a reward to get through some of the knives that I know I wasn't going to relish so much. So, you know, yeah, that's what's going on here. All right, we are basically back in business here. We're ready to go. Just going to spread this booze out a little bit to let it evaporate more. There we go. All right. So that's begun the evaporation process. Let's go ahead and begin the reassembly process here. This is a free spinning pivot, which is not great, but it is what it is. Actually, I'm not going to put the pivot in yet. The reason I say that is I don't want the little balls to fall into the pivot there. It shouldn't be a major deal considering this, but it's just something I'd rather not see happen. So let's go ahead and start the reassembly process here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to use some 10-weight nano oil here, and I'm going to use a fair amount of it here. I'm just going to kind of pour it into these little grooves here. The reason I'm using so damn much of it is that I want to make sure that there is enough to kind of keep these individual balls in position. Because I am, well, not so much on this side, but on the other side, I'm going to need to actually invert the knife, the scale that is, to set it onto the other side. And that's something that will require a little bit more care. Now I'm going to go ahead and just use this other one just to make sure I've gotten the last of the gunk off of there. And now what I'll go ahead and do is just start the reassembly process by chasing balls across the room. There's going to be a lot of ball chasing going on here, guys. That's just a simple fact of life with IKBS. I probably should be doing this in some principled way, like inside then out, but practically speaking, I'm just going to drop these wherever they land and hope that it's, you know, for the best. There's a certain zen to this, I will admit it. I approach these kinds of disassemblies with a mix of enjoyment and trepidation. You gotta do it at a time you're ready to do it. This is not a, oh, hold on, let me just maintain this before we leave thing. No, this is a, I'm in this. I got stuff running over there for work. Oh, there. Oh, come on now. You know, I got the moment to dedicate here. I'm just gonna kind of start moving things together. This has the advantage of compressing everything, giving you more space to drop the next ones into. And considering that it doesn't look like this guy has been taken apart before, or if it has, it was done skillfully because there aren't a lot of missing balls. It's occasionally been the case that I've got an IKBS knife, you pop it open, there are like 3 freaking balls in there. It's maybe an exaggeration, but still, because the last jackass lost them. And I am struggling slightly because the pocket clip makes this not sit evenly on the table. So I have to use my other hand here to do that. Okay. And so I'm going to drop this last one here. And so what we end up with here is a situation similar to what we started with. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that there are 2 rows of balls and there is a 1 ball gap in both of them, which makes sense. You want to have a little bit of a gap there so things that will move together. Next step going to be next step is going to be to put a little grease on the pivot there. And now we're going to slide, keeping everything vertical. Well, okay. Vertical by 1 frame of orientation. Now we're going to go ahead and drop the blade onto here. And I'm going to go ahead and drop the stop pin on as well, because it's something I don't want to have to worry about later on. So there we go. Now we have half of the knife put back together here. This should be a non-issue over here. I'm just going to pretend that there aren't a billion balls loose in there. And I'm going to go to the other side here, and we're going to do the exact same thing again. Where again, I'm going to use this other, just to make sure that there's no residual gunk on there. And to dry them off a little bit, I'm going to put a little bit of oil again into the race here. Beautiful. And we're going to do this same thing on the other side. Only 14 minutes in. That's not so bad yet. If you can get multiples, that's good. But if you can't, oh, look at that. Sometimes it's not. You get a little snake of IKBS goodness. That can be nice. And after a while, the one thing to remember is that the lubrication is serving as an adhesive here. Oh, yeah, look at that. That was nice. It's the little things, really. But anyways, the lubrication is serving as a sort of adhesive here, which is keeping the balls together. It's keeping them in position, and is also serving to kind of attach them to your tweezers, if you're using tweezers. And so you want to embrace that. Just kind of pushing everything together here, just to give me an easier place to drop everything into. Whoa there, that got a little real. Go ahead and chase the... This is why you want to be on a surface that can catch the balls if they start rolling, because they want to do that. Here we go. Most of the time, I'm just kind of using the tip of the tweezer to guide it in there. Okay, I feel like I might be missing a ball or two here. Am I? No. Is there anything on my tweezers? No. Is there anything down there? No. Okay. Well, let's actually scoot everything together. On this side, actually, I didn't count the number on this side. There are two ways that this will go. I will either put this back together and think, okay, well, in which case I must put all the balls back in there, or I will find a little tiny ball in a couple of days and go, damn it, and then repeat this process. But what I'm doing right now is I'm just using a flashlight here to search the area, because these little balls will show up very nicely. I always think to myself, why would I count the balls? It seems silly, right? Then I never do it, and then I end up feeling like this. But you know what? Like I said, this is a perfectly fine number of IKBS balls to have in this, so I'm not concerned. All right, next step here is going to be to have things ready. So what I'm going to do now is try inverting this over my hand. Okay, good. So there's enough lubrication on here that I can invert this liner here and everything will be okay. So what I'm going to do is invert the liner and then very gently try and set it down such that the stop pin is in position and the pivot is in place. So I'm probably going to get quiet real quick for that, so sorry about that. Ready? Here we go. There. Come on, you little bugger. Go, 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 go. Oh, yeah. There we go. We're in. Oh, good God, are we in. Now, at this point in time, I want to keep pressure on this area here. I want this pivot to stay engaged. The reason for that is that I don't want these to come separated so that balls can start rolling out of there. The other thing I need to do now is start reinstalling the backspacer. And unfortunately, the backspacer is using 4 different screws. That's good for rigidity, but it's a little frustrating for my life, because each of these screws will need to be added before I can put the pivot in place, which will actually allow me to be sure that nothing can come loose in here. What I'm just trying to do right now is to find the hole, basically, using this screw. There we go. Okay, so now we're through. I'm just going to go ahead and let that sit in there for a second. Now, once I get a second screw in, I'm good to go. But that involves a little more alignment. Come on. There we go. Okay, good. Second screw is in, which means all the rest of these. I am not using any thread locker here because these are internal screws. So it doesn't actually matter whether or not they're thread locked because they're not freaking going anywhere. There we go. And actually, let's just... What I'm having to do is kind of shift the scale to one side here, because right now the lock bar is in position, or is locked in place. So that's providing a little bit of counter tension, torsion, something or another on there. But anyways, no Loctite here. These screws can't come falling out anyways, because they are captured by the G10 on the top of them. Okay, and as I've done this now, I feel more secure because there's only so far these two pieces can come apart. Tighten. And we tighten. That's beautiful. Okay. What I'm doing right now is I'm just doing a quick check to make sure that everything looks solid in there. That I'm not seeing a bunch of balls rolling around inside. I'm going to close the blade real quick. Oh, yeah, that's nice. Oh, yeah, that action. Oh, that action. All right, moving along. Now we're going to do the next step here, and we're going to go ahead and put this G10 in place. This allows me to get to a wonderful moment in my day, which is when I put this pivot screw back into position. On this guy, I am going to use just a little bit of Loctite here, using a blue, less permanent thread locker, and just a little tiny tad of it. And my goal there is just to make sure that whatever pivot tension I dial into place stays in place. I'm not going to really crank on this right now because I don't need to. There we go. Oh, yeah. Smooth like butter. That freaking threading is great. I'm going to go ahead and disengage the lock. Okay. It's a free spinning pivot, so I'll need to cross that bridge when I come to it. But at the same time, I don't really super care right now because now my IKBS is in position. Doing just a little tiny bit of the thread locker on there. Just the slightest kiss of it. Oh, make sure everything's aligned, and then it goes home. Okay, not putting too much torque on it because they're tiny little screws with T5s. I think this is going to have just a sublime action. Again, a little tiny kiss of thread locker to make sure this doesn't go anywhere. Okay, so now what I want to do, zero blade play. Oh, yeah. That's just spectacular. There is no sign of any other trouble here. No vertical play. Not even a hint of horizontal play. And it drops beautifully. And way more... Oh, God, that action's good. And I actually didn't even lube the freaking detent ball path. So I'm just going to put a little tiny drop of lubrication onto the detent ball here, which will do that. And maybe even smooth it out further. Oh, this is a nice knife. Alrighty. So there you go. That is your A2, I don't even know the name of this one. I want to say A2, A3? Something along those lines. There are always A's and numbers and whatnot. I hope you found this interesting, though, and thank you for joining me on this journey here. That really was as satisfying as I'd hoped it would be. And have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.